Hi and welcome to the Malat cookery channel. So in today's video I want to show you how to make the softest, lightest white bread possible, and also how to extend the freshness of home baked bread by at least 24 hours. And in order to do that, I'm going to share with you my secret soft white bread recipe. As usual, a full list of ingredients will be given at the end of the video, so let's have a look at those ingredients now and any other equipment we're going to need for today. Right, so let's go through this secret recipe to create this incredibly soft white bread that will stay fresher for longer, but I'll just go through some of the basics that we need first. So we've got 500 grams of bread flour, 14 grams of easy bake dried yeast, so this is 2 7-gram sachets, 1 teaspoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, 4 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, 400 milliliters of lukewarm water, so I've placed some hot water in the bottom of the jug and then topped it up with cold water to create this lukewarm solution. And we need 400 milliliters, which is just a rough guide. It all depends which manufacturer's flour you're using. You may need slightly more water, you may need slightly less, but I will be going through the visual indicators that we need to look for to see the correct hydration for this particular dough. The two ingredients that make this recipe quite special, one is I think called vital wheat gluten, or sometimes just called wheat gluten. So vegans, you'll find this in vegan vegetarian shops, or you can find it online, and vegans use this as a good source of protein. We need 50 grams of vital wheat gluten, so it's actually 10% of the flour, so 500 grams of flour, 50 grams of vital wheat gluten. And this vital wheat gluten will give the flour a gluten boost, and once we work it correctly, we work the dough correctly, it will create a lot of elasticity within the dough and help you make this really soft white bread, which obviously we're looking for. The other thing we're going to need is a thing called ascorbic acid. Now, ascorbic acid in bread making will do a number of things, but there's two things we're really interested in. One is ascorbic acid will improve the crumb of the actual bread itself, so it will improve the structure of the loaf. The second thing that ascorbic acid does is it extends the shelf life or the freshness of the bread, and we can get that in a sort of a domestic setting from vitamin C tablets. So what I've got in here is 2 500 milligram vitamin C tablets, because we need about 1,000 milligrams of ascorbic acid. And when you're buying vitamin C tablets, make sure that it is the unflavoured vitamin C tablets. There are a lot of vitamin C tablets out there that are flavoured with orange. Obviously we don't want that. So this has no artificial flavours or colourings in. And again, we just need 1,000 milligrams. So whether you buy that in 500 milligram tablets, which this is, or you buy the more expensive 1,000 milligram ones. This particular pack was about £1 in the UK for 30 tablets, so it's relatively cheap. So the other thing we're going to need is obviously we're going to need the pestle and mortar, and we're also going to need our food mixer with the dough hook, because again, if we're going to be getting the best we possibly can from the vital wheat gluten, we are definitely going to have to work this dough regarding kneading, and if we do it by hand, that will take about 20 minutes. So we're going to use a food mixer with a dough hook, and that will take around 12 minutes to actually get the best we possibly can from this recipe. So the first thing we need to do is to crush the 2 500 milligram vitamin C tablets into a fine powder, and I'm obviously going to do that with a pestle and mortar. Okay, it doesn't take very long at all. So now that we've got the vitamin C tablets crushed, the next thing to do is we take all of our dry ingredients and mix those into the bowl thoroughly. So now that we're happy that all of the dry ingredients are mixed in thoroughly, the next thing we want to do is add our extra virgin olive oil, and that, as I said before, is 4 tablespoons. And once we have our extra virgin olive oil into the mixture, I'm now going to work this in with my hand and just create a very fine crumb. So I just want to show you this as a rough guide of the visual indicator you need to look for when we're using a food mixer with regard to the correct hydration for this particular type of dough. So all food mixers obviously have a speed setting, and what we're going to do is we're going to start off on the second, so number 2. Now of course all models are different speeds, so this is just a rough guide. So I'm going to be starting off on number 2 and then starting to add the water into the dough slowly, and then once we get to where we think we've got enough liquid in there, I'm then going to switch the speed up to a middle setting, so either 3 or 4, and then see how that goes. And what I'm looking for is right in the bottom of the actual bowl itself. What you'll see is you'll see the actual dough clinging to the bottom of the actual bowl. What we want to see is that clinging to the bottom of the bowl on a setting of 2, 3 or even possibly 4, but as we move to a higher speed it actually lifts off. And the correct hydration is where we get to a middle setting speed and the dough sticks to the bottom of the bowl, but when we place it onto one of the higher settings or even the highest setting, after a minute or so the dough comes away from the bowl and sticks into a ball, and then as we drop the speed back down again to a middle setting it will start to catch onto the bottom. When we get to that stage we know that we've got correct hydration, and what we'll do then is we'll place the speed control on a higher setting, so above the middle setting, so that the dough virtually lifts off the bottom of the bowl, and we'll leave it there for about 12 to 15 minutes. Right, so once the dough has been in the food mixer for about 12 minutes and it's well worked, the next thing to do is we're going to place the dough into a ball, put it into a slightly oiled large bowl directly into the center. We're then going to cover the bowl with cling film or food wrap and place it into a warm part of the house until it doubles in size, which should take about 40 minutes. So our dough has now doubled in size. It took about 40 minutes for that to take place. Next thing we want to do is to degasse and then shape the dough. So I'm just going to place just a little bit of flour onto this clean work surface. Take out our dough mixture. Okay. So that's all we need to do with regard to degassing. So all I'm looking to do is just to get some of the very large carbon dioxide pockets out of the dough itself. Otherwise, if we don't do that, when the dough goes into the oven and then starts to rise again, those pockets will get even bigger and bigger, and that won't be great for the finished product. So now that we've degassed, we're looking to shape the dough. Now I'm not going to go into techniques of shaping because I'm not a professional baker and I don't feel it's right that I should do that. But there are plenty of videos on YouTube, on the internet, on how to shape dough correctly. So all I'm going to do is, I'll just show you what I do actually. So I'm just getting it into a sort of a rectangle shape. And then I'm going to fold this side over, and then with the heel of my hand just press that in, turn that around, do the same thing with the other side and press that in, and then just fold the entire thing over, press all that down. And then here I've got a 23 centimeter loaf tin, which I've just, although this is, I think this is nearly new, I've lightly oiled with some olive oil, because we definitely don't want the dough to stick to the sides. All of this hard work would all go to waste. I've also lightly oiled the top of the tin as well, because as this loaf rises it will spill over just slightly to the edges, and again that's an area where it can stick. So now we've got some nice surface tension on the actual dough itself. That goes into the loaf tin. What I'm going to do now is we're going to go for a second proofing. So I'm going to cover this with cling film or food wrap again, and then I'm going to wait not until this doubles in size, but until it rises to about 2 centimeters above the edge of the actual tin. Don't let it rise any more than that, because if you do, you'll start to overproof it and the potential is the loaf will collapse in the oven. So just until this rises to about 2 centimeters above the lip of the tin. In about 10 minutes I'm going to start to heat the oven, and we're going to preheat the oven to 180 degrees centigrade. What we don't want to do is we don't want this to proof for the second time until we've got the perfect loaf ready to go into the oven, and then have to wait until the oven preheats. So I just wanted to give you a quick guide on the second proofing stage before the loaf actually goes into the oven. So if you look, we've got that 2 centimeter height above the lip of the actual loaf tin. Of course we're going to take the food wrap or cling film off the top before it goes into the oven, and the oven is already now preheated to 180 degrees centigrade. So 30 minutes roughly until it's actually done, and then we'll come back and have a look at it. Okay, so this is our loaf straight from the oven. It's actually taken 35 minutes, not 30 minutes. The next thing we need to do is we need to take it out of the loaf tin and let it cool onto a wire rack, which is absolutely vital. Do not try and cool the bread or the loaf either in the tin or on a flat surface, because there's still a lot of steam within the bread itself and the underside will just sweat. So carefully take it out. So the way we can tell if the loaf is actually done is if we just tap the underside, it sounds hollow. So that's a really good indication that it's actually baked enough. So now comes the killer bit. I'm going to have to wait now until this cools down. Don't attempt to try and cut into it while it's hot. There's still, as I said, there's a lot of steam within the loaf itself, and it'll just start to go just mushy and horrible if we cut into it. Okay, so let's cut into the loaf. It's cooled down now enough to be handled. It's still not as cool as I'd like it to be, but I'm running out of time. So first thing you'll notice is incredibly soft crust. If you want to bake a loaf with a harder crust, this is definitely not the recipe for you. It will produce this incredibly soft crust every single time. So if we cut into it, so if we now take a slice of this bread, So this is really what I'd like to show you. So I've got a really uniform crumb, a lot of elasticity. I mean, this is so light, this particular loaf. And then the softest crumb you'd probably ever make. And you get these same results every single time. You get this elasticity, you get this incredibly soft bread. And a lot of that is down to the vital wheat gluten and actually working the dough, as you've seen in the video. So as I promised at the start of this video, we've made some incredibly soft and light white bread, obviously with the addition of being able to extend the freshness by at least 24 hours. Please subscribe to the channel, and as usual, if you've enjoyed this particular video, hit that like button. Thank you very much for watching.